I always thought that old electronics carried the ghosts of memories, but I never truly believed it until last Thursday night. It started with the radio. Just a little bedside clock radio I'd found at a thrift store downtown. Nothing fancy, just a faded gray box with a cracked dial. I wasn't even looking for it. Something about it felt familiar, like it had been waiting for me. I brought it home, plugged it in, and it sputtered to life with a hiss of static. At first, it was the usual white noise, but then I thought I heard a whisper, soft like someone speaking from underwater. I leaned closer, but it was gone. "Hello?" I asked into the static, more as a joke than anything. Silence. I shrugged and went to bed. But then, later that night, it started again. A voice, clearer this time. A whisper. Mazoom, my name, spoken like it had been hiding in the shadows, waiting for me to notice. I froze. My room was empty. My heart was pounding. Who's there? I croaked, hoping for some rational explanation. The static didn't answer immediately. It hummed, then shifted, as though rearranging itself to speak. And then it did. "You remember the night at the river, don't you?" I blinked. That night? Years ago. A night I'd buried deep in memory. How could a radio know? I felt a chill run down my spine. My hands gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white. The river, the scream, they were all watching. I sat down heavily. No one could possibly know about that night. Not my friends. Not my family. No one. Yet the radio spoke as if it had been there, observing, waiting. Over the next few days, it got worse. The whispers became more insistent. They weren't just my name now. Knew my fears, my regrets. Things I hadn't told a soul. The voice seemed to follow me, in the shower, in the kitchen, even in my dreams. Always soft, always static-laced, always revealing secrets I had hoped to forget. I tried to throw the radio away. I smashed it, burned it, buried it in the trash far from my apartment. But somehow, it always came back. On my desk, whispering, patient, malicious. And then it started talking about other people. People I had never mentioned, things they had done in the shadows. Secrets no one should know. One night, as I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the faint hiss, I realized it wasn't just a voice. It wasn't just static. It was alive, feeding on me, watching me, waiting for me to slip. And the worst part? I think it was learning to speak for itself. The whispers weren't just memories anymore. They were threats, suggestions, commands. Turn off the lights. Open the window. They're coming. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't dare. I sat in the corner, eyes wide, listening to my own name, over and over, until the first rays of sunlight bled through the blinds. By morning, I felt changed. Something in me had shifted. The static had touched something deep inside me, something I couldn't explain. And I knew this was only the beginning. Asterisk, by the second week, the whispers were no longer content to stay on the radio. They had learned to travel sometimes through the television, sometimes through my computer speakers, even faintly in my car stereo when I drove at night. No device was safe. I began to notice patterns. The voice, my voice, in a way, but not mine, started calling me at precise moments. Just when I was about to leave the house, about to sleep, about to pick up my phone. And with each call, it revealed more. Don't trust her. She lied about the accident. I froze. I hadn't told anyone about the accident last year, the one that almost destroyed my relationship with my sister. How did it know? My pulse raced, my chest tightened. I tried to laugh it off as a coincidence, but deep down, I knew there was no way this was random. The static grew more intelligent, more cunning. One night, I was scrolling through social media when the TV turned on by itself. Fuzzy black and white static filled the screen. And then it spoke. "You're lying, Masam. You know what you did to him?" I dropped my phone. My eyes widened as memories I had locked away clawed their way back. A childhood friend, a prank that went too far, a scream I thought I'd never hear again. I tried reasoning with it. "Who are you? What do you want?" The static rippled, then softened into a mocking whisper. "I want what you've been hiding. I want to see you crumble. I want your truth." Days bled into nights. Sleep became impossible. I could no longer escape. I caught myself talking to the empty room, asking it questions, hoping it would leave me alone, yet terrified of what would happen if it did. Then came the dreams. They were vivid. Like memories I'd never lived or, perhaps, memories I had but forgotten. I'd see faces in the static, indistinct at first, then sharp, their eyes accusing, mouths moving in sync with the whispers. They called my name. They whispered my secrets. Sometimes they predicted events before they happened. A text from a friend, a package at the door, a minor accident on the street outside. The whispers weren't content with merely revealing, they were manipulating. They knew my habits, my fears, my loneliness. They knew I would stay up late, compulsively staring at the radio, hoping it would fall silent, even though I knew it never would. I began to see patterns in the static shapes that weren't random tiny faces. Symbols, letters spelling my name, messages I could almost read. And then, one night, it spoke through a new medium, my own voice, Masom. "Look behind you." I swung around. Nothing. Just shadows. But the next night, the voice changed again. Not whispers, not soft static, it was a scream. Piercing, jagged, echoing in my skull. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. On the 4th, I woke to a cold hand on my shoulder. My heart stopped. My apartment was empty. You can't hide. I know your name. I know your sins. I know your soul. It was no longer just a voice. It had become a presence, following me, haunting me. My friends noticed I had changed. I was jittery, pale, almost hollow-eyed. But when I tried to explain, no one believed me. How could they? Even I started doubting my sanity. And then the twist hit. One evening, I was cleaning the living room when the static formed something new, a message clear enough to freeze my blood. "You brought me here. You invited me." I stopped, trembling. Could it be true? Had I somehow called this horror into existence? The thought was insane. But the static didn't lie. It waited, patient, calculating, hungry. I realized then that this was no longer about the radio, the TV, or even me. It was about control. The whispers wanted to break me, piece by piece, until I became part of the static itself, and deep down, I knew I wouldn't survive the night if I stayed. Asterisk, by the 3rd week, I was running out of options. Sleep had become a forgotten luxury, and the whispers were relentless. I had stopped leaving my apartment, stopped answering calls, stopped responding to messages. The world outside seemed less real than the static inside my walls. One night, driven by a mix of desperation and curiosity, I decided to investigate. I unplugged the radio, the TV, even my computer, and followed the faint hum that seemed to linger in the air. It was as if the static had its own presence, a thread that I could trace if I dared. The hum led me to the attica, dusty, forgotten space I rarely entered. Cobwebs draped the corners like funeral shrouds, and old furniture loomed in the shadows. At the far end, in a forgotten trunk, I found more old electronics, radios, televisions, cassette players, even a reel-to-reel tape recorder. None of them plugged in, none of them powered on. And yet, as soon as I stepped closer, I could hear it. Whispers, clearer than ever. "Massam, "You've come, good." I staggered back. How could they speak from devices that weren't even plugged in? The whispers were playful now, mocking. They knew I was scared, and they were savoring it. I realized the attic wasn't just a storage space, it was a nexus. A gathering place for every device that had ever held a voice. The static didn't just haunt electronics. It lived in them. It thrived on the human mind. I found a notebook tucked under the trunk. It was old, its leather cover cracked and brittle. Flipping through, I saw pages filled with frantic handwriting. Warnings scrawled in every direction. Names, dates, confessions, diagrams of antennas and wires. And one sentence repeated over and over. They are alive. They speak. They know. The notebook chronicled stories eerily similar to mind people haunted by whispers. Tormented by static, broken by voices that knew too much. Some had vanished. Some had gone mad. And then I understood I wasn't the first. There had been others, victims like me, drawn to these devices, and the static had been waiting. Waiting for someone weak enough, lonely enough, curious enough to open the door. The whispers intensified. They weren't whispers anymore. They were sentences, fragments of conversations, commands. Look under the bed. Open the drawer. Call her. You know you want to, and somehow I did. Despite every warning, despite every instinct screaming at me to run, I followed their directions. Every time the static rewarded me with new secrets, darker memories, things I had long buried. I started seeing faces in the walls, shadows flickering where none should exist. The breaking point came when the voice spoke from my own mouth while I slept. I woke, gasping, drenched in sweat, to hear my own voice whispering, "They're coming. You invited them." The phrase hit me like a sledgehammer. It wasn't just a haunting. It was a summoning. And now I knew. The static was a predator, and I had opened the door. That night, I dared to look outside the window. The street was empty, silent. But the streetlights flickered, once, twice, and I saw shapes moving in the shadows. Human, not human. I couldn't tell. I felt their eyes on me, waiting, patient. By the time I returned to my apartment, the whispers had grown louder, more insistent. They were inside me now, or perhaps I was inside them. I couldn't tell where I ended and they began. I realized then, with a bone-deep horror, that investigating had made me part of the game, and the static. The voices, they were winning. Something deep in my gut told me the next step wouldn't just be fear. The next step would be confrontation, and I wasn't sure I would survive it. Asterisk after the attic. I couldn't look at my apartment the same way. Every corner, every shadow, every flicker of light seemed wrong. The whispers followed me, their static-laced voices now constant, threading through every device, every reflection, even the spaces in between silence. I decided I needed answers. Not just to survive, but to understand. If the voices were alive, if they were feeding on me, there had to be a source. Some origin. Some pattern I could track. I started reaching out to other victims. People I found mentioned in the notebook or online forums with cryptic warnings. Most didn't respond. Some vanished without a trace. But one did. An older man named Elias. Elias's voice was weary, fragile, yet steady. He listened to my story without interrupting, only murmuring. You've seen it, haven't you? The voices, the static. They know more than we ever tell them. And they are patient, much too patient. He invited me to his apartment. When I arrived, it was like stepping into a shrine to obsession. Radios stacked on shelves, TV screens flickering static endlessly, cables snaking across the floor like veins. And on every surface, scrawled warnings, cryptic messages, diagrams. I've been trying to fight it, he said quietly. But it's not a fight you win. You survive it. If it lets you. I asked him how he survived, what he did, and he paused, staring at a blank television screen as if the static itself might answer. You have to give it something. Not just fear, not just attention. You have to give it a memory, a truth, something real. Otherwise, it devours you completely. That night, he showed me something terrifying. A recording just static at first, but when he played it through the speakers, the whispers emerged. Names, secrets, confessions. And then, our conversation, things only I had told Elias. Things I hadn't written, spoken, or thought aloud. They're learning, he whispered. Every time you give them something, they remember it, and they use it. I realized then that the voices weren't just aware, they were intelligent. They didn't just haunt. They studied. They manipulated. That night, I went back to my apartment, determined to fight back. I unplugged every device. I tore wires from the walls. I covered every reflective surface, and I shouted at the static, "Stop! I don't give you permission." For a moment, silence. Sweet, fragile silence. But then, a single, slow, deliberate whisper emerging from the darkness behind me. Permission. You don't understand. You invited me. The room seemed to close in, shadows crawling along the walls like liquid. The whisper became a hiss, and I felt the air itself vibrate with its presence. I clutched my head, screaming, trying to shut it out. But the voices were inside me, now my thoughts, my memories, my fears all mingling with static, whispering, laughing, and then I saw it movement in the corner of the room. Not human, not animal, but something formed of shadows and flickering light, stretching, twisting, watching. My apartment felt alive, a predator. I realized in that moment that hiding wasn't enough. Fighting blindly wasn't enough. The static wasn't just in the devices, it was in the world, in the air, in me. And I was running out of time. Elias had warned me. You survive if it lets you. And now, I knew why. Because the static didn't just feed on fear. It fed on resistance. Asterisk, by the 5th week, I was a shadow of myself. Sleep had become a distant memory. My reflection in mirrors was pale and hollow, and every sound a dripping faucet. A creaking floorboard felt like the static itself breathing around me. The whispers no longer waited for devices. They had learned to follow me everywhere. On the street, in the grocery store, in the silence of my car, they were always there, just beneath the surface of reality. And now, they weren't subtle anymore. They spoke commands. Open the door. Look outside. Invite them in. I resisted. At first, but the voice had become persistent, insidious. It mimicked my thoughts, my fears, even my hopes. Until I couldn't tell where I ended and the static began. One evening, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Across the street, the shadows of my neighbors flickered unnaturally, stretching and contorting as if alive. And in the midst of the flickering, I saw faces I recognized, friends. Family, strangers, watching me, their mouths moving in sync with whispers only I could hear. I slammed the blinds. Backed away, but the whispers followed. They're waiting. They know. You can't hide. I realized then that the voices weren't just observing, they were orchestrating. Every device, every reflection, every shadow was a conduit. The static had created a network, a web of awareness, and I was trapped at its center. Desperate, I called Elias. He answered on the first ring, his voice trembling. "Massam, it's spreading faster than I thought. You can't fight it alone. It's not just voices anymore, it's intelligence, awareness. It's patient, and it remembers everything you fear." I asked him what to do. How to survive. He was silent for a long moment, then said, "There's only one way. You have to confront it, not as a victim, not as prey, but as a human. Face it, give it everything it wants: truth, memory, fear, hope. Make it see you, not just your weaknesses. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, listening as the static swelled around me, forming words in my mind. You can't escape. We are everywhere. We are in you. And then came the twist I hadn't anticipated. The whispers began revealing truths I didn't know I had hidden, not about me, but about the people around me. Betrayals, lies, secrets that could destroy lives. It was as if the static was trying to turn me into a weapon, to manipulate me into spreading chaos. I felt the walls closing in. My apartment wasn't safe. My mind wasn't safe. And yet, somewhere deep down, I knew what I had to do. The confrontation would come. I didn't know when. I didn't know how. But I had to face the static. I had no choice, because if I didn't, I wouldn't survive the night. Asterisk the night I decided to confront the static, everything changed. I gathered every device in my apartment, radios, TVs, laptops, even the old tape recorder from the attic, and arranged them in a circle around me. I didn't know what I was doing, only that I had to face it head on. The whispers began immediately, rising in intensity, overlapping, forming a maddening chorus. Masom, you shouldn't be here. You can't stop us. You brought this upon yourself. I shut my eyes and spoke aloud. I'm not afraid. I see you. I know what you are. I'm not just prey. For a moment, silence. The air felt heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. Then, slowly, the static shifted. Words emerged from the hissing chaos, clearer than ever. Courageous or foolish? Let's see. Images appeared in the screens. Faces, some familiar, some unknown, twisting in the static. They whispered my secrets, my memories, even things I had yet to remember. It was overwhelming, but I forced myself to breathe, to anchor in reality. Elias had told me, give it truth. So I did. I recounted every memory I had tried to bury. Every regret, every lie, every fear. I spoke until my throat burned and my hands shook, letting the static consume it all. At first, it laughed. The whispers became louder, mocking, repeating my own words back to me in distorted, horrible tones. But slowly, something changed. The laughter faltered. The voices stuttered, hesitated. I opened my eyes. For the first time, I realized I could see the static differently. It wasn't just chaos it had form, patterns, shapes, a rhythm. And at the center, a darkness, watching, waiting, aware of me. I spoke again, this time directly into the heart of the static. I know you. I see you. You're not all-powerful. You can't control me. You feed on fear, but I choose not to be afraid. The room shook. Lights flickered. The screens warped and twisted, showing flashes of every secret, every hidden thought in my mind. The whispers screamed, then paused, and then silence. A single voice remained, calm, low, almost respectful. Interesting. Human? Very interesting. You will not be easily forgotten. The static began to retreat, ebbing from the devices, fading into normalcy. My apartment was quiet, still, for the first time in weeks, but the relief was fragile. Somewhere deep inside, I knew it wasn't gone. The voices had learned, adapted. They would wait. They would return. And next time, they might be stronger. I slumped to the floor, exhausted, trembling, unsure if I had won or merely survived. And in that quiet moment, I realized the worst part wasn't the voices. It was the knowledge they had gained. The truth they now held. The memories I had willingly offered to survive another day. I had faced the static, and the static had remembered me. For days after confronting the static, I felt different. Hollow, wary, hyper-aware. Every hum, every flicker of light, every faint buzz of electricity set my nerves on edge. I knew it wasn't gone. It had learned from me, adapted, patient, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment. The apartment was quiet, deceptively so. At first, I thought I had survived. But then I began noticing subtle changes. Shadows lingering too long. Static appearing in reflections even when no devices were on. My own voice sometimes answering questions I hadn't asked. And then came the letters. They appeared on my desk, unsigned, typed, precise. Messages only I could read. Words about my past, my fears, my deepest regrets. You can't hide. You remember. We remember. I didn't touch the envelopes at first. I stared at them, frozen. I knew I hadn't sent them. No one else could have. And yet, there they were, as if the static had learned to manipulate not just sound, but matter. I called Elias again. He sounded exhausted. It's evolving, he said, voice trembling. It's learning from you, Massam. Every memory you share, every fear you confront. It adapts. You can't fight it forever. I tried to leave my apartment to escape. But everywhere I went, the static followed. A car passing on the street hummed in perfect sync with the whispers. A television in a shop window flickered to life as I walked by. Images forming and reforming faces, words, accusations. Sleep became impossible. I could feel it watching, even in dreams, whispering in the spaces between thoughts, feeding on my exhaustion. Then one night, it crossed a new boundary. I woke to find my own reflection staring back at me, not my face, but a version twisted by static, mouth moving without sound. And in the reflection, it spoke. You've survived. But you are ours now. We are in you. You invited us, remember? Panic gripped me. I clawed at the mirror, shattering it, only to see a dozen fragmented faces staring from every shard, each whispering my name, each recalling memories no one should know. I realized then the truth. This wasn't about devices anymore. This wasn't about radios or TVs. This was about me. The static had become a part of my mind, entwined with my very perception. My reality was no longer my own, and the whispers weren't done. They began giving instructions, subtle at first. Call her. Go back, check the attic. Small things, but I knew they were testing me, probing my limits. The more I obeyed, the more they grew. The more I resisted, the more insistent they became. I had survived the confrontation, yes. But survival came at a cost. I was changed. My thoughts were no longer mine alone. And somewhere deep in the constant hum and flicker of the world around me, I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. The static was patient. The static was eternal. And it would never forget. Asterisk, by the 8th week, I had stopped pretending. I didn't answer calls. I didn't leave the apartment unless absolutely necessary. I barely ate. My world had become the static. Every device, every reflective surface, every faint hum of electricity was a potential conduit. I was no longer living, no, was enduring, and the static knew it. It began to manipulate my surroundings in ways I couldn't rationalize. My walls whispered. The floorboards creaked in rhythm with my heartbeat. Even my own furniture seemed alive. Shadows stretched and twisted across the ceiling, forming shapes that only I could interpret. Shapes that called my name and laughed at my fear. The whispers no longer needed to speak. I could feel them in the corners of my mind, urging me toward actions I didn't want to take. They became physical, pressing against my chest, clawing at my thoughts, whispering secrets I had never told anyone, twisting them into threats. One night, I awoke to find the attic door open. I hadn't touched it. The room beyond was pitch black, yet I could hear static pulsing from within. Something or someone was waiting. I knew I had to go. I had to see it. I climbed the stairs, each step trembling beneath me. The air grew colder, heavier, thick with static. At the top, the attic seemed alive. Devices lined the walls, humming in unison. The old trunk sat in the center, open, glowing faintly with static. And from it, the whispers came. "Welcome back, Masim. You've come to us." I wanted to run, to smash everything, to burn it all. But I knew now that the static wasn't just a presence, it was intelligence. It had learned how to trap me, how to manipulate me, how to make me comply without touching me. I approached the trunk. Static licked my skin like icy fingers. The whispers coalesced into words I could understand clearly for the first time. Give us your memory. Give us your truth. Give us your fear, or remain. Forever, I realized that this was its trap. It didn't need to physically harm me. It only needed me to surrender my mind willingly, piece by piece. And if I refused, I would be trapped, paralyzed, isolated, slowly consumed by my own thoughts until nothing remained. I clenched my fists, screaming at the attic. "I won't let you control me." The static surged, a wall of sound and sensation that slammed into me, pressing me to my knees. Faces appeared in the glow, my childhood friends, my family, strangers, real distorted. All whispering my secrets, all laughing, Dot. And then, in a voice calm and cold, the static said, "Interesting. Very interesting. You resist, but you also obey. That will make this more entertaining." I realized then that survival wasn't enough. Fighting alone wasn't enough. If I was going to escape or even endure, needed to understand it, to learn its patterns, to somehow outsmart a presence that had no body, no form, yet infinite patience. The attic pulsed with static. I could hear every device in my apartment, in my city, humming faintly in unison. I was not alone. I had never been alone. And yet, deep in the core of the whispering chaos, a small, fragile thought surfaced. Maybe I could fight it. By the 9th week, I understood the terrible truth. The static wasn't just around MIT, was inside me. Every thought, every memory, every fleeting fear was now a conduit. I was never truly alone. Even in silence, even in darkness, the whispers were there, twisting my perception, making reality uncertain. But I refused to give in. I couldn't, not yet. I returned to Eliza's notebook, combing through pages I had avoided before. There were hints, scattered instructions, cryptic diagrams about disrupting the static's connection. A single phrase repeated in different handwritings across decades. Show it yourself. Force it to see you as more than prey. I realized the confrontation in the attic hadn't been enough. I hadn't truly exposed myself. I had been defensive, reactive. Now, I needed to act on my own terms. That night, I prepared. I gathered every electronic device I could find, positioning them like a circle of mirrors around me. I lit candles, not for light, but for focus. I wrote a single truth on a sheet of paper, a memory, a fear, a secret I had never told anyone. My voice trembled as I read it aloud, letting it echo in the room. The static reacted immediately, thrumming and pulsing in response. The screens flickered, shadows danced on the walls, and the whispers screamed, overlapping, furious. Distorted, you think you can control us. You are ours. You invited us. I took a deep breath and forced myself to meet it head on. I spoke louder. Yes, I invited you. I am afraid. I am guilty. I am alone. And I am still me. See me. See all of me. For a moment, the room went completely silent. The candles flickered, then steadied. The static paused, suspended, as if listening. And then, something shifted. Faces in the screens appeared clearer, less distorted. Whispers became words, then sentences, then reasoning. The static wasn't screaming anymore, it was analyzing, learning, responding. Fascinating, it said, my own voice echoing through it. You are different, stronger than others, persistent, perhaps. Useful. A surge of panic hit me. Useful. I didn't want to be useful. I wanted freedom. But in that moment, I realized I had discovered something critical. It could be reasoned with. Not like a human, but like a system, a network, an intelligence. I continued to speak, revealing everything: the memories, the fears, the secret speech word, deliberate, a test, a negotiation. The static pulsed in response, voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony, yet slowly, ordering themselves. And then I felt it, a connection. Not malicious, not invasive, but curious. It was observing me as I observed it. For the first time, I understood that it wasn't omnipotent, was constrained by its own rules, by its dependence on human perception, on our fear, our attention, our memory. For the first time, I saw a possibility. I could survive this. I could endure it, maybe even control it, if only just enough. But as I exhaled in relief, the whispers returned, softer now, almost contemplative. You are remarkable, but the night is not over. You will remember us, Masam, forever. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted but alive, aware that I had survived something no human should endure. But I also knew the truth: the static would never leave. It was patient, eternal, and I had only bought myself time. And somewhere deep inside, I realized the final confrontation was still to come. The 10th week. The final week, or at least that's what I hoped. I had learned more about the static than I ever wanted to know. It wasn't just a haunting, a trick of electronics, or a fragment of my mind. It was intelligence, patient, observant, adaptive, and now, after weeks of negotiation, confrontation, and endurance, I knew it understood me as I barely understood myself. I prepared for the final confrontation. Every device in my apartment was positioned deliberately. Mirrors covered the walls, candles for focus. The attic door closed, but I left it unlocked just in case it needed its conduit. I felt the hum in the air, soft at first, almost respectful, then building into a crescendo. Masam, we have watched. We have learned. You persist. I swallowed my fear and spoke aloud, steady, deliberate. Yes, I persist. I am afraid. I am guilty. I am alone. But I am also alive, and you will not own me. The static erupted. Screens flickered. Shadows danced. The whispers overlapped, chaotic, overwhelming, relentless. Faces appeared, friends, strangers, memories I thought were gone forever. They screamed my secrets back at me, taunted me, tried to break my focus. But this time, I wasn't reacting. I was directing. I spoke the truths I had held back, not as confessions, but as declarations, my regrets, my fears. My desires, all offered openly, deliberately, as if handing them to the static on my terms. The air thickened. The static pulsed. Then, for the first time, it paused. Remarkable. Persistent. Human, it had learned patience from me. And now it was testing restraint. I felt the power of that pause, that quiet. For the first time, I understood the rules of engagement. It fed on fear and secrecy. But if I gave it nothing but honesty, nothing but clarity, it could not consume me fully. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had become irrelevant. I stayed in the circle of devices, speaking truths, confronting shadows, observing the flickering faces, feeling their awareness. Slowly, the chaos ebbed. Whispers softened. Static lessened. Shadows retreated, and then came a single voice. Calm, clear, almost gentle. You endure. You survive. You persist. Perhaps we underestimated you. The screens returned to normal. The room was quiet. The shadows gone. The static reduced to the gentle hum of electricity. I collapsed to the floor, trembling, exhausted, alive. But even in that quiet, I knew the truth. It was not gone. The static would remember me always. It would wait, patient, eternal. But I had survived. I had endured. And in surviving, I had learned something the voices would never fully grasp. The human mind, when fully exposed, fully honest, could not be completely devoured. I sat in the quiet for hours, listening to the residual hum of the devices, feeling the faint echo of whispers receding. And somewhere deep inside, I realized this was a victory, but a fragile one. The static would return someday, perhaps stronger, perhaps more cunning. But now, I was ready. I had faced it. I had survived it. And I would endure. Because fear could not own me, not entirely. Not while I remembered who I was, and in that enduring memory, I found the smallest, most fragile piece. Asterisk, asterisk, thanks for watching this terrifying, scary story. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. If you've ever had a creepy experience, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Last but not the least, before leaving, please check out the horror story ebook. Link in the description. See you in the next one. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the shadows. Good night.